If you like me, science fiction movies from Eastern Europe, very obscure science fiction movies from Eastern Europe, well, you're in luck because today we're talking about Wolf's Hole. I'll spare you the name in Czech, which I haven't learned. It's a movie from 1987. It's an alien invasion movie from Eastern Europe. Those are very rare. I'm only aware of one. I've only seen one, at least. Today's video, we're going to explore all the cool things. There are a few things which are a little less successful, which I'll also talk about, but mainly it has lots of interesting details, which I'll talk about. So without further ado, here's what the story. Let's start with the story. So essentially, it starts off like a teenage movie, and it is kind of a cross between like a teenage adventure movie and a horror movie and a science fiction movie and like an auteur movie, new wave movie, and a very trashy Jess Franco movie. It has some aspects of that Jess Francoitude. It's set in the mountains. We have a bunch of teens, and they have all won. Most of them don't know each other, but they've all won a ski workshop. They've all won the privilege to attend a multi-day, like a week-long ski workshop in the mountains. Have a special cottage, isolated, of course. It's organized by a mysterious man and his two slightly older teenage acolytes. The thing is that there's supposed to be 10 of them, but as soon as it begins, there's a mystery because there's an 11th person there, like an 11th teenager has immersed herself or himself in the group, and so there's an intruder. So the organizers are very upset by this, and it's all very strange and mysterious, but they decide that, okay, since no one wants to admit that he or she is the intruder, then we will let all of you decide. You will have to decide who the intruder is. You will have to vote on it, essentially. But we will do this in the cottage. We will go with the I forget what the name of the ski elevator is, but we'll walk. We'll go into that strange isolated cottage where nobody can talk to us, where the radio doesn't work for a whole week. All of us strangers having a good time, and as it turns out, we soon find out that all these teenagers basically kind of hate each other. There's a lot of tension certainly between some of them, and the organizers are not nice at all, and it almost turns into like a Stanford Prison Experiment type of situation. It has sort of that Lord of the Flies kind of thing, but it doesn't go quite as far in certain ways, but it's that general kind of feeling. And by the end of it, well, there have been lots of amazing discoveries because, as I mentioned, this is a science fiction channel. Let's just say that if you've seen old Outer Limits episodes, you might recognize some of the plot themes, like what's going on here, why are they going through this experiment? You will recognize the general theme, but the end of it, which I will not spoil at all, is quite successful. I liked it a lot. So what the movie eventually does with it is quite interesting. Here, without further ado, is all the many qualities and the main, things that don't work as well, but mainly the qualities of the movie and why I liked it so much. It has a I'll often start with the music because it has sort of that electronic, very atmospheric 80s techno synthy soundtrack, and it works very well. The opening credits, it's shots of, ice forming like at 5 times the speed or 10 times the speed or something like that in fast motion, and it sort of reminded me of the opening credits of the Invasion of the Body Snatchers remake. Very frightening, certainly when I watched it when I was a kid. It really frightened me, that one. But if you watch it now, it's very atmospheric, and it's set up in the beginning of Body Snatchers 78 by that synthy music and that very strange fast forward, plants growing in the case of Body Snatchers. But we have something similar to that here, and it certainly sets the tone very quickly, and that mystery of who is the 11th intruder teenager, that works very well. The first half of the movie is really, carried by the mystery of that 11th, intruder teenager, but also by that very slow escalation of the whole, as I said, Stanford Prison Experiment, which I mentioned, which is really the core of the movie. And if you're not aware of it, it was an experiment. I think it was in an American university. The idea was that a teacher hired some students and divided them into two groups to run an experiment, and one half were role-playing as prison wardens, and the other half were role-playing as prisoners. The teacher wanted to know if the fact of putting somebody in the role of a prison warden would automatically make these people behave with less than humanity, if you like. And the experiment went so bad in the case of the Stanford Prison Experiment that it needed to be halted after 6 days instead of the 2 weeks it was planned to be, because it descended into horror and barbarism, essentially. That teacher, apparently, when he saw the Abu Ghraib photos from 2001, the American CIA prisons in Afghanistan with the infamous torture pictures, it's exactly the same thing, essentially. It's the same mechanism. And the movie is about that. Now, I will say that if you check on Wikipedia, his conclusions have been disputed, the Stanford experiment, for good reason. I mean, his methodology was not very sound, nor were his ethics. But the general idea that, if you have a concentration camp and you have people who have absolute power on the other group, it always devolves into something horrible. Nothing good ever comes from a situation like that. And so the movie is about that. And it has that whole Lord of the Flies aesthetic or sensibility. But it's interesting to compare because Lord of the Flies is a British story. It was made into a few movies, like there's a Peter Brook movie from the 50s or 60s or something like that. There was the one in the 80s. That whole idea of, kids are all monsters inside, and if you put them on a desert island, they will all kill each other and revert into, again, barbarism. It's actually like a very, very, very English, British concept, which moved on to the American culture, which is also an English-based culture. It's the core, gel of the whole thing is the English culture and sensibility. And I mentioned this because this is where you can see that there's a cultural difference between that theme as it is expressed in British culture and the way it is expressed here in Czech culture. We are still in communist Czechoslovakia, were they forced to have let's say, an perhaps optimistic ending, to have a less dire conclusion than the, man is a wolf to man ending of Lord of the Flies? Maybe, but I think there's more than that. So again, I won't spoil the ending here because I liked it. It was a bit iffy in parts, but the core thing, I liked it very much. It takes another spin on that story. And I do think that there's a cultural difference, like in the case of, of England, their infamous school system, like in the Pink Floyd The Wall. Many British movies, that the Psychic Power movie with Richard Burton, I forget the name, the Medusa Touch, I think it's called. That's a big part of that movie as well. And even the Harry Potter stories, I'm sorry, but they're horrible. A big part of it is just how horrible the kids are to each other, and that idea. I think it's very linked, and that again, sociologically, there would be many, observations, very interesting observations we could have in that direction. But certainly here we have that same theme, and explores much of the same feelings, but it's slightly different. Okay, and the conclusion is again slightly different, and I liked that a lot. There are some horror aspects. One in particular, which I did not see coming. There's a big horror reveal eventually. No spoilers here. That I was really shocked. I mean, I did not see it coming at all. I was genuinely, surprised and horrified really by one. It's more than a jump scare. Like there's a reveal eventually, which you won't see coming. I don't think so. Which was very cool. There are a lot of creepy details, like one of the kids is walking outside and there's one of the organizers is, leering outside the window, and it's very strange. It reminds me a little bit of House with the Yellow Gables, like the Pupi Avati horror movie, which is fantastic. I mean, that's like a kind of a strange giallo movie, which has a very odd feel. Great, great, great movie. And so it has a little bit, at least that shot, a little bit of that feel. So there are elements all the way through which are very atmospheric, very strange, very, surprising. The mystery works very well. What's going on? Who are these people? What do they want? And the build-up of going from these admittedly non-sympathetic teenagers, or going from what is still a teenage movie, all like not the Goonies, but almost vaguely something like that, to what becomes like a psychological horror movie, but still maintains that kind of teenage feel, and with the horror aspect I mentioned and the science fiction aspect. So that transition from teenage movie to very intense, serious psychological movie, horror movie, while still maintaining that teenage movie lightness in some aspects, as it has the horror in depth, but still that feel. I mean, that's very cool. That evolution from the beginning to that horror, which we find later. I like that a lot. I thought it was very good. So many things to like in the movie. I mentioned the Jess Franco thing, and I think I might have mentioned the Czech New Wave. So the director, once again, her name is, let me double click here, Vera Chytilova, and she was part of the Czech New Wave in the 1960s. Perhaps if you're like me, you had never heard of the Czech New Wave until very recently. Like for me, I learned about it this week. But it was very comparable to the French New Wave in the sense that you have all these young, exciting, innovative directors. In the case of France, you have Claude Lelouch and Jean-Luc Godard and Louis Malle and all these people. Directors of the Czech New Wave, there are many of them, but there was Milos Forman, who later moved to the US. Obviously, I think he did People versus Larry Flint and many films like that. Jan Svankmajer, the famous animator, he did an Alice in Wonderland, like surrealist, almost David Lynch animation. And Jan Hertz, he did something like that. He directed Ferrat Vampire. Anyway, many people. And again, I'll have to check her name. Vera Chytilova, she was one of the main, apparently, directors of that movie, and I think her movie was called Sirens. I haven't seen it, but I will say this: that Czech movies is one of my main discoveries of the last few years. Usually, I'm extremely impressed. They're very enjoyable, very well made, and you have the spectrum of very commercial comedies, but very smart, well made, well acted, but also, author, historical movies. I mean, generally, they are the untapped source of certainly the Western cinephile. They've made a lot of science fiction movies. I mentioned one here, I think, end of August at the Hotel Ozone, which is a jaw-droppingly good movie. I mean, it's a total masterpiece. Amazing movie. And but I think Ikari XB1, the 1960s spaceship movie, which I love. I think the icon from this channel I took from that movie. But whatever. I mean, there's tons of movies, and they're barely known outside Czechoslovakia, but they are incredibly good. And both the science fiction movies, but also the historical dramas or whatever. I mean, check them out, if only for the science fiction movies, but they're all so good. And she was a big part of that movement. She often worked with amateur actors, and this is the case here. I mean, the leader of the Aliens is obviously a professional actor, but most of the kids aren't. And I have to admit that it works. It doesn't always work as well throughout. I mean, sometimes they are clearly amateurs, but it's okay. It's still, I mean, it is what it is. Like, it's an aesthetic choice. I mean, you lose the professionalism. It's funny because amateur actors oftentimes feel less natural. I mean, they feel less real than actors who know how to fake it professionally, if you like. But okay, so the actors here, sometimes they're clearly amateurs, but I have to say it works really well. What doesn't work as well, or which you might like it depends. But I mentioned the Jess Franco thing, and there's a lot of zooms, quick zooms, and a lot of quick, pans, and the editing is very, very, very quick. It's astonishingly quick. Even for us who have seen, we've watched MTV begin and die. So we had 20 years of music videos with cuts every second, and with YouTube with no attention span. Even with all that, the editing is very, very, very quick. And it creates this effect which is not always effective, but when it does work, okay, it reminded me of Possession. I mean, the Andrzej Zulawski, I think his name is, he also did On a Silver Globe, which I did not like, I have to admit, but which still had that aesthetic of the very strange, camera movements, and unnatural camera movements, and you have that here. And in the case of Zulawski, I don't think it worked on the Silver Globe, but in Possession, certainly it works very well in creating this very odd Lovecraftian feel. And you have that here. Sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it's too much, it's too Jess Franco. But sometimes it does create that offbeat, off-kilter atmosphere. Yeah, so the actors are usually amateurs. It doesn't always work. The editing sometimes is a little bit too frantic. The camera movements and pans and zooms or so forth are, again, very reminiscent of somebody like Jess Franco, which is not always a compliment, though I like Jess Franco. But so the movie has that kind of odd feel which gives it its charm, which is it's a auteur movie but also feels like an exploitation movie. It's a teenage movie but also a horror science fiction movie, and it's also clearly a political science fiction movie, and it's both kind of heavy-handed, I have to admit, towards the end. It has that, hitting you on the head with a message thing a little bit, but it also has a form of finesse, it's this odd mix of not quite successful and very cool. All in all, I liked it a lot, especially for something that is so little known. I mean, a friend of mine who has sadly passed away, a guy I liked a lot, he recommended it to me, and I think it's on Tubi. I think there's a streaming channel, I think, that has it right now, so you can check it out. And if you do find a good copy, it looks actually pretty good. It's not a big budget movie, but a good quality print. The movie looks good. It has that intelligence, it has that sense of atmosphere, that sense of mystery, that sense of dread that builds up very successfully. Kind of reminded me at times of Dead Mountaineer Hotel, the movie from the 70s, one of my all-time favorite science fiction movies based on the Zulawski brothers novel. So it has that kind of feel. It's not quite as smart as Dead Mountaineer Hotel, but it's kind of in there. It has that sort of feel. So if you're into semi-trashy, semi-art house, a little bit exploitative, but at the same time, smart, movie, I mean, how many movies really manage to combine all that? So it doesn't all work, but all in all, it gels together, and I liked it a lot. I do think it's worth checking out, and I liked, again, the ending very much, and all the, the music, the atmosphere, the credits at the beginning, which reoccurs a few times during the movie, like that quick animation, all that, and the tension between the kids, and the drama, and all that stuff. So, yeah, it works really well. I liked it very much. So it's a good one to discover. Wolf's Hole from 1987. Do let me know if you check it out, if you enjoyed it, and till then, take care. Keep all the hope in your heart. Even though things feel like they're crumbling, the YouTube thing is falling apart. Doesn't matter. Life is good. Keep watching the skies. Live long and prosper. Take care.